Hey, this is Jamie from Green River Ordinance. You're listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KZCC LP Conroe and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
Good afternoon and welcome to The Legal Connection with Tony and Cheryl. Tony Lynn Collins, Tony Sheritz Collins and Cheryl Ellsworth Jahani. We are two Texas licensed attorneys, and we are here every Tuesday on 104.5 and 106.1. You can also watch us live on Facebook, and we're here to talk about legal issues, questions. We have something relevant today. Tony wants to talk to us about...
As opposed to our other show.
Well, it's relevant to today, and I think it's important because it's going to expire. You're right. Okay, so what we're talking about are CDC, Center for Disease Control, property evictions and options.
Yes.
To get money for your rent if you don't have
how it applies. Will you qualify, or as a landlord, what can you do if you've got a tenant in your property who is won't pay the rent, and the CDC order, which is Center for Disease Control, has provided a moratorium under the different factions, whether it be state or federal or county or whatever. There's different ones we'll talk about, but. If you can't pay your rent and it's during this COVID period, which has been extended through March 31st, 2021, then there is a way to stay in your in the property, in the landlord's property, because of all of these orders that have come through. We're going to talk about those and answer a bunch of questions and stuff. But we're also going to talk about vineyards.
Yes, Tony wanted to talk about vineyards last week.
You have a vineyard. I want a vineyard.
Mm-hmm.
Vineyards are a big deal here in the Hill Country, and we're close enough to the Hill Country for it to count.
Right.
And I have been unable to get a vineyard started. All of my grapes from Sam's die. I mean, I've taken pictures. I get close. I literally trespassed right off of 105 to try to get pictures. I went to France. I did all these things to try to get a vineyard started. A small one, like on an acre or something, even smaller than that.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted like a 40 by 40 vineyard, just to kind of clear some land and put it on there. Haven't been able to get it going. You're going to tell us about how your vineyard was prolific and you could have a chateau because you know how to do it. So we're going to talk about that too.
Okay.
But first, we're going to talk about the CDC order on evictions and why they are helpful to tenants and really completely adverse to the landlord position, who are also affected by COVID. So I feel like the landlord's gotten the short end of the stick here.
Which they have. But Tony, if these tenants apply for this relief funds, the landlord gets paid, right?
If they qualify, but the relief fund, the coffers for these, where the funds are coming in through Catholic Charities and the different charitable organizations, and the ones even set up by the government, where it's coming in by, I guess, I don't know if Salvation Army is one of them, but the different ones you can call to find out where the money is. If you call 211, I didn't know that is for, let's see what it was called. If you dial 211, it is the phone number that you call for social services. So if you know somebody that's homeless,
I didn't know that.
But these people that are trying to fight their evictions all know that. Apparently, it was common knowledge.
Oh.
If you call 211, they give you the different agencies and where you can look, and like Lone Star Legal and places you can go for help when you're down on your luck. And so 211 is the number to call.
Okay.
But the bottom line to our show today is basically if you are a person that rents property and you qualify, then you can file this declaration that's it's called the it's a COVID declaration, and you can pretty much Google it and it comes up, and it's got certain things that you have to swear to, and you give it to your landlord. And if you file this declaration swearing to these certain things that we'll cover in a minute, then it abates the eviction. It doesn't matter when you file it. If you cannot be kicked out on the street if you file this, and it can't be proven by the landlord that any of the things that you swore to are not true, right? But they can. The landlords are getting kind of smart because they're coming through now, and they're actually with full force arguing that these declarations are a fraud, that they're not being truthful. The problem is the burden's on the landlord to prove it. And so, it's really just kind of a touchy subject, but to the extent that COVID is sort of winding down, even though we still have a high death rate, a lot of people are getting we were just talking about my dear friend just died. I don't know if it's COVID, but he was in perfect health. And then
so many people, Tony. I don't know if I told you this, but I never get on Facebook. I got on Facebook the other day, and a bunch of my friends, family members,
Suddenly.
sisters, brothers, just dead.
they're like posting like stuff on Facebook, and they're
And
going
then- and then they're gone.
They're saying how much they appreciate the business they're getting, and everybody stay healthy, and they're wearing masks in their pictures. And then, I mean, literally, a friend of mine who is dear friend. I was stunned. It was just last week. I mean, I was thinking about him, and I kind of was, trolling his Facebook like a stalker, because I was like, oh, look, this is fun, and his wife, I was just looking at both, and then I got a notice on Monday that he died, and I'm like, I was stunned. I called him. I'd actually called his office and just to talk with him, just to chat, because we'd met him in Europe for an event, and just touching base with him. And they said, and they were like stumbling, saying, well, he was kind of sick, and well, we'll get back with you. And I thought, I didn't think anything of it. I mean, I called and I thought, well, I mean, I just had touched base with him. He had just liked a bunch of my Facebook posts and commented on them because we just kind of banter, right? He's just a friend of mine.
Oh, it's so sad.
And then they said, we're sorry to notify you that he passed away. I'm like, if I had known he was sick, like passing away sick, I would have been like right there giving my blood or something to keep this guy alive. And so I don't know what he died of yet, but I think it was COVID.
Well, it's all these mysterious. They don't talk about what they died of, but all of a sudden they're just dead.
Yeah. So I think that's what it was. But that goes to, you need to appreciate life every single day, because you don't know. And it's particularly with COVID, because just like we were discussing earlier, you're talking with somebody one day and then you find out they died.
I know.
It's like stunning. And it may not just be COVID, but it's just stunning when you find out that happens. And we're all going to die, but we don't want to die that quickly. I think I'd rather have some, foreshadowing and be able to get with them and, talk about whatever. Anyway, it's really, really sad. And so this goes toward this, why we have the CDC order and declaration, so that there wouldn't be, I think, one of the reasons for it, and I think I just want to, I'm going to ask some of our frequently asked questions on this. Because,
well, before you do that, for our listeners, you were telling me that there has to be one reason that they're evicted, and that's non-payment of rent, right? That's the only way this will apply.
Right. You can't, if your landlord has a legitimate reason other than non-payment of rent, like you're a holdover tenant because your lease has already expired and you've been notified properly, or you've been, there's a whole litany of them. You've been criminal activity, dogs on the premises. The lease provides that you have to let the landlord in to do pest control, and you won't let them in. There's a number of other reasons that they could be evicted, but if you're using the non-payment of rent as a proxy, these other things as a proxy for non-payment of rent, so you're trying to get them out, then it won't work. And the numerous eviction hearings that have been appealed, and then I'm looking at them, watching them online, because there are just so many of them. It ends up that the judges are siding with the tenants constantly. It's just nonstop.
But it has to be for non-payment of rent.
If the judge believes that the landlord is just using an excuse, non-payment of rent,
Or won't let me in for pest control.
or they're using another excuse, right? It's pest control or criminal activity, or they've breached something else, but the real reason is non-payment of rent, then the judge is going to abate the eviction.
Okay.
And if you file this declaration, even after you've been evicted, they can't kick you out. And it's rampant, really. At any point, you can file this declaration, and the first declaration doesn't go away, but it just reinforces it. And then what happens is, when you file this declaration, they always say one of the points in the declaration is they have to use best efforts to pay the rent. But the landlord won't accept the rent, even a partial payment, if they want to get rid of you. So they say they haven't been paid. So what you do is you send the money to the court registry, and the judge will always ask, has rent been paid? Have they made best efforts? And then the court, the person that's representing the tenant A lot of times it's just the tenant, but they're very savvy. Sometimes it's Lone Star or one of the pro bono agencies.
Oh, I didn't know they answered the phone. Can you really get Lone Star to
And
represent
they're
you?
representing them. Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Wow.
211 is out there and helping these people. And it's kind of an esoteric area of law in that the people that are representing them do this all the time. And so if you can get the agency, they'll put you into the the cattle call of tenants, and you get someone to represent you. And the Zoom hearings, it's not like it was even last year. All these hearings are via Zoom,
I know.
which means that the attorneys representing tenants and landlords can put more cases together because they're just doing Zoom hearings. Today I was watching one because I actually had a Zoom hearing in this court, and there was a guy in front of me, and he was doing an attorney was representing a landlord, and he was opposing the declaration. He was saying they didn't use best efforts. They've been in there since we've tried to evict them since March of 2020. We haven't received any money. And he ended up, and he filed a motion for summary judgment. Why? Because you can't get juries right now. Because to get a jury trial, you can't get a jury. You can't get the jurors to come in because of COVID until sometime in May.
Who filed a motion for summary judgment?
The landlord
tenant?
did. The
Okay.
landlord did, saying, and what happens is the tenants don't follow the legal rules to respond, and so they don't have any evidence to offset the summary judgment. You know how that goes. They've got so many days to file. If you don't get it in by a certain a date
21
certain,
days.
then it has to be 7 days before the trial that they have to get their response into the summary judgment before the hearing is set. And then if it's not in, then there's no evidence and there's no fact issue, they're sure to be granted. But the judges aren't doing that. The judges are giving them all the benefit of the doubt to the tenant. So if they come in even after it's been continued and they get a stay and all that stuff, the judges are not ruling on the fact issues, not having a response, not having contested facts. The judges are in almost every court that I watch not holding the tenant or the defendant to those guidelines.
Really?
Yeah, they're saying, well, did they file anything? And what the tenants attorneys are doing are saying, look, we had a freeze last week. I mean, they're not even responding to the question, and the judges are still, well, maybe I should continue this. They're giving all the benefit of the doubt to the tenants. And I've seen a couple of them actually get an eviction order. And then with the eviction order, they've still got, they can still appeal the eviction. They can appeal it in JP court, but they can appeal it in county court because you can appeal it to the high court. So it's just, if you're a landlord and you've got somebody that's savvy or got some legal aid to help,
you're in trouble.
It's really difficult to get your rent payment. And so if that was your source of income because you're a real estate investor and you're relying upon this rental income because that's what you do, then you're in a bad position because if these, unless you've got a tenant that doesn't know about all of these CDC orders and rules and they're not savvy about how to stay in the unit or the property, then you've got some problems. And so I saw one eviction, summary judgment eviction that got granted today, but everybody else is using the CDC declaration, which we're going to go over some of the reasons.
Why was that granted? Why was there
theirs was granted on not non-payment of rental. Theirs was granted on not letting them come into the tenant, completely disregarding and not communicating with the landlord. And when the landlord showed up to get into the unit, they wouldn't let them in because the units were connected and there was I guess an infestation of termites or whatever. I guess they must. My apartments never did termite checks, so I can't.
Yeah, that sounds like a setup to me.
But it is, and that's the way to get them out. And so they didn't have a response to it, and it had been over a year, and there was no payments that were made to the court registry, and the tenant didn't get on the line to talk. They didn't get on the Zoom hearing to defend themselves even. Well. But summary judgments it's only what's in the record. But so there was an eviction on that one. The summary judgment was granted. But in the very next hearing, the judge was getting ready to grant the summary judgment to the landlord again for the same reason. They were opposing the declaration that was filed. They knew the ropes. The tenant actually called in and was surprised. Everybody got on the line and called in. And then but to me, the story, she had no evidence. It was just her word. And I wasn't believing it as just a listener if I was a juror, because the first statement was, I got in I know I haven't paid my rent in over a year, but I got in a car wreck. And then after I went to the car wreck, I learned that because of the when I went in for my
Bruises.
medical bruises and stuff, they learned I had cancer. And I'm in after the cancer, and I couldn't keep my job. I went into chemotherapy, and I'm really sick from it. And I still can't make any money because even though I got another job, and I tried to pay partial payments, now I'm sick because I got the COVID vaccination. And I'm like, well, hold up, wait a minute. This woman's got cancer. How does she? Why would they inject more, the COVID virus into her so she wouldn't die of COVID when she's already got, terminal cancer?
Underlying.
To me, I'm like, I'm not even believing this. And so I called Jim, and I'm like, hey, would she qualify for a COVID vaccination? Because, Jim's a doctor and all. And he said he didn't think she would, but he didn't know that's not something he had looked into. So, all these people that want this vaccination, which we've gone over all the litany of reasons why you may not even want the vaccination, because there's no proof that you wouldn't still get COVID, and you still have to wear the mask. But people are all getting it. And but how did she move up in the ranks when she's got cancer and is on chemotherapy? So then I was like, there's no proof. It's just what she's saying. But then we find out that she's got a whole a litany of other people living in the apartment with her. But since she qualified to sign the declaration, the judge still abated it. The judge said, I'm going to find that the declaration is valid and that it's abated. And when there's an abatement, even if it's a moratorium, that's what it's called. There's still, the Supreme Court is determining that the same thing as an abatement. It means you can't do discovery. As a landlord, you can't look into their, you can't file to look at their bank records. You can't ask them on with interrogatories if they've had a job or anything. You can't do anything. It's just debated. But that will all end unless it's extended again on March 31st, because that's the expiration of this last moratorium. And I think that moratorium is, I don't know if that's federal or state.
Do you know how many moratoriums we've had on this?
A lot, because they issue orders. There are orders through the Supreme Court of Texas. And they're, and I say that, and I need to look exactly who actually issues the orders, but they're usually for 2-month periods, 6-month periods, not 60-day periods. And so this last one is coming up. I don't know if they're going to issue another one, because right now, Harris County, the Harris County attorney, and using that as an example because they're really good about sending emails and updating you. I don't get so many notices from Montgomery County at all.
No, me neither.
But with Harris County, they're saying, look, we're now selecting juries at NRG. We're going to start, our trial schedules are going to pick up in May. They're starting to set trials in May, jury trials. I think I may have mentioned this, the way that a lot of tenants were getting out of even having to go to trial, and that's why the landlords were having to file motions for summary judgment, was they were asking for jury trials. Everybody was asking for jury trials, knowing
they don't have jury trials.
The jury
right
trials
now.
wouldn't be set because they're all backed up because we haven't had trials for a year through May. And another one I was listening. And I'm telling you, there's the same attorneys that do a lot of them, because I was watching one hearing and then they take a break, and so the Harris County live streams, you just pop into the next one. So I popped into the next one, and they were, the court was actually calling the attorney that just finished this last hearing and that one, and they were saying, oh, and the tenant attorney was like, from Lone Star, was like, he's not here, I guess we're going to have to pass this. And being the nosy person that I am, I actually zoomed in. I said, hey, he was just in a hearing. I was just watching it.
Did you say that?
And the judge said, who are you? I said, I said who I was. It didn't really matter. I said, I don't have a case in your docket. I'm just letting you know that Mr. I think his name was Cecilia. I said, he's going to be calling right in. I mean, he literally just finished this hearing. And he did. And I'm like, got to go, bye. I said, I wanted to hear the guy had, if you watch them, you can actually get the, if you don't do this all the time, and we don't do landlord-tenant law, we do all kinds of law. But I was interested in it because we have kids that have apartments. They're that age right now. They have been out of work. They are, my daughter's living with me right now, but she's paid her rent on her apartment, but she's been in and out of work because of COVID.
I know.
You know, it's like.
And my son in Austin, your daughter that's her
Yeah, she
permanent
lives in Austin,
residence,
right.
My son in Austin too. I mean, he sells cars at Subaru of Austin, and I mean, with the ice storm and the COVID and
the ice storm, and they're just starting out. They're just out of college. They've got, they're not high person on the totem pole of these jobs. And if their sales jobs have been affected by COVID,
Totally.
And so if you're the low man in the totem pole because you just graduated from college and got a job, then you're going to be the first one to go. And so, but my daughter has been steadfastly paying her rent. She's not
Good.
She doesn't want it on a record because the
Yeah,
anxiety
Jonathan
of
either.
not having it on the record, having an eviction or
Yeah.
even a possible on
It's
a
not
record
worth it.
was not worth it. And so
Yeah.
they're paying the rent, which I think is the right thing to do. So we raised our children right. All right. So that being said, let
Yes.
me ask you some questions.
Okay.
And see if you know the answers. And I'm going to say right up front, disclosure, I don't know the answers.
Okay.
So we're going to be, maybe station manager Dick will know some of the answers. Okay. So here's our introduction. It is about the COVID rules. And we kind of beat around the bush here, but now I'll answer some more questions for you. The non-binding guidance document shares the view, this declaration of this document that we're working off right now, of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, which is the CDC, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, which is federal, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is HUD, and the U.S. Department of Justice. There's lots of federal organizations that are following this COVID and giving guidance to persons that are affected by it. The guidance document that we're going to go over does not create or impose any obligations on any member of the public or any entity beyond those established by the order, which is the CDC order we're going to talk about. The guidance document is not a comprehensive summary of the duties and obligations established under the order. Individuals should seek legal assistance through legal aid programs if they need more information than what we're going to give today. On December 27th, 2020, which was just a little over a month ago, the president, and I guess at the time it would be President Trump, signed into law the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021. This extends the expiration date for the CDC order titled Temporary Halt in Residential Evictions to Prevent the Spread of COVID. That's the whole reason for the order, is to prevent the spread of COVID.
Oh, okay.
COVID-19. That was put into place on September 4th. The new expiration date is January 31st, 2020, but I know that that's been extended to March 31st, 2020 now.
2021.
I'm sorry, 2021. Okay, so what does the order do? And I'm going to answer that question just because it's an easy answer. The order temporarily halts residential evictions of covered persons, and it's important to know who covered persons are, as you may not be a covered person, for non-payment of rent during the period that the order is in place, which is now through March 31st, 2021. This means that a landlord, owner of residential property, or other person with a legal right to pursue an eviction or possessory action, that would be the order after the eviction to remove from the premises, cannot evict for non-payment of any covered person from any residential property in any U.S. state or U.S. territory where the order applies. And pretty much so that covers it. It's just a non-payment of rent. The reason the order is entered is to prevent the spread of COVID. What does the CDC mean by eviction? Do you have any idea?
Well, I think it's the tenant wants to stay and the landlord wants them to go, and so they get removed from the property.
Eviction means any action by a landlord, owner of residential property, or other person with a legal right to pursue an eviction or possessory action or to remove or cause to remove a covered person from residential property. You haven't paid your rent. They want you out. But that eviction covers, it's a large umbrella. Eviction can be for any reason, not just for non-payment. So the order that we're going to go further into, the order only covers non-payment of rental. Let's see. So let's just move on. Who is a covered person? Any idea?
Someone who,
For the purposes of this order.
been affected by COVID that can't pay their rent.
Yes. So there's 5 categories of who a covered person is. And so if you don't fall into this category, then you wouldn't, this order wouldn't apply and you could be evicted for non-payment of rent. The individual has got to use best efforts to obtain all available governmental assistance for rent or housing. That is the biggest argument. That's the primary argument that all of the attorneys are using that are contesting these CDC declarations to stop an eviction, is you didn't use your best efforts. And I will just say right now that the very first step that someone wants to use if they sign this declaration is they want to call 211 and find out what the options are in your area to get governmental assistance or this says all available governmental assistance for rent or housing, but it's not just governmental assistance. They've gone a step further to see that you've gone to look for the efforts through the charities. So 211 is going to set you on the path to find out if you can get assistance, which you're probably going to be turned down if you weren't like first in line or whatever, but you may eventually get it. But 211, call that number. The second thing is the individual either expects to earn no more than $99,000 in annual income for the calendar year 2020 to 2021, are no more than $198,000 and filing a joint return. That's a pretty high amount. I'm looking at our kids.
Right.
Our kids don't make that generally,
Right.
so they would fall into that category. It says third is the individual is unable to pay the full rent or make full housing payment due to a substantial loss of income, loss of compensable hours of work or wages, layoff, or extraordinary out-of-pocket medical expenses. So the big one here is basically everyone's just saying, I can't pay my rent. I lost my job. I'm not making the same amount of money. Which during COVID that affected waiters, waitresses, a lot of people,
So
salesmen.
many.
So that's an easy bar to meet. Fourth, the individual is using best efforts to make timely partial payments that are as close to the full payment as the individual circumstances may permit, taking into account other non-discretionary expenses. That's where you have to go to the charitable expenses at the charitable organizations, and they're going to be asked. It's fourth in line of importance of what you can argue. The problem that the landlords are having is that once the declaration is signed, they have to abate all their activities to be able to prove that they're not making best efforts. And as long as a person has tried and can prove that they applied to the charitable organizations, even once a month, that's enough to cover this. And the judges they're saying they met this, and so the declaration will stand. And because the landlords and the landlord attorney can't subpoena their records to see if they've been looking for work, because everything is abated, all discovery is abated, it's almost impossible to prove this, so the declaration stands. And the final thing is eviction would likely render the individual homeless or force the individual to move into or live in close quarters in a new congregate or shared living setting because the individual has no other available housing options. And where this one can be proven otherwise, if they filled out their rent agreement and they're they just were living with their parents before, and their co-signer, let's say, is a parent that lives, in Houston or someplace in Texas. That one you'd be able to get around, I think, because they can show there's another housing availability because they had a co-signer. A lot of people have co-signers on their rent agreements. So there's a way to get around it, and this doesn't always apply. But those are the big qualifications. Those are the things you're signing off on. And I think there's like 10 things on the declarations. I'm looking at it right now. But those are the big ones. And then you sign it under, oath, and it doesn't have to be notarized, but you're declaring this. And then basically what you do, if you're a tenant, is if an eviction proceeding has been filed, then you file this declaration. You give this to your landlord, and you can also file it with your court. But as long as you give it to the landlord and can prove you did by keeping a copy, and, some facts to show when you gave it to him, you're pretty much it's going to be stayed if it's for non-payment of rent. So the landlords are getting around it now by going to the other ways to get you out with your holder or whatever. And that hasn't worked very much. Okay, so here are some additional questions. How does someone use this protection? And I think we
This
went over that.
declaration.
Yeah, the protection given to you under the CDC order. So pretty much, what do you think? We just went over that.
How do you use it? Oh, yeah. Well, you just.
What is the main thing you've got to do in order to be subject to this, the CDC halt of eviction?
Well, be unable to pay your rent, but then file this declaration.
Yeah, that's the most important thing you do is you've got
Tony,
to return.
where do they get the declaration?
You can get it almost anywhere online. If you Google CDC declaration, it comes up. The form is like interactive. You just fill it in.
Okay.
And it basically, I don't know if we can show this on our deal.
I think
Here. You don't even have to fill in anything. It's already printed out for you. This
just have to sign
declaration is literally just a form, and it's got a signature spot at the bottom. That's it. So I don't know if that was shown or not, but you don't have to do anything. You just fill this form and get it to your landlord. Okay. All right, so, and it has a little footnote. An extraordinary out-of-pocket medical expense is defined in the order as any unreimbursed medical expense that is likely to exceed 7.5% of one's adjusted gross income, and that's like through the IRS. You don't even have to go there. I think we're okay with it. Has the CDC provided a declaration form that eligible individuals can complete and submit to their landlord? The question that you just asked.
Yes, they have.
Yes.
They sure have.
If you, CDC has issued a declaration form that is compliant with the order. CDC recommends that the eligible persons use this declaration form. The form is available on the CDC website. So if you just say CDC form, it's going to come up for you. And we've got a link. We can provide it, but you don't even need it.
Yeah.
Today I put CDC form in and it came up right
came right
away.
up.
You can
Okay.
just print it and file it. I have already been evicted. Does this order apply to me? What do you
Yes,
think?
it does.
effective the date of the order. That means that any evictions for non-payment of rent that may have been initiated prior to September 4th, 2020, but have yet to be completed are subject to the order. That means you can stop the eviction at any time. If you're still in that unit, you just file this form, even if the eviction's been ordered by the court. Any tenant who qualifies as a covered person is still present in the rental unit is entitled to the protections under the order. Any eviction that occurred prior to September 4th is not subject to the order. But there's other state orders that may apply. And it may be why a couple of my clients that were going through some hard times, they had eviction notices before September 4th, 2020. These are much more stringent rules, but the state had some orders that would have applied. If I'm a covered person, do I still owe the rent to my landlord?
Yes.
Yes. Covered people still owe the rent. The order halts residential evictions only temporarily. Covered persons still must fulfill their obligations to pay the rent. You entered a contract and follow all the other terms of their lease.
Right.
Covered persons must use best efforts to make timely partial payments that are as close to the full payment as possible. When the order expires, consistent with the applicable landlord-tenant rules, a covered person will owe the landlord any unpaid rent and any fees, penalties, or interest as a result of their failure to pay rent. So you're still going to owe it, and they can get a judgment for that. And then under the normal legal procedures, they can come after you for the amount that is due. But what we went over last week and what we've been covering is if you call 211, there's charitable agencies that will go forth, and particularly if you're within this, it's a temporary eviction program, and I think we're going to cover that in a little bit. But there's charitable organizations you can call, and if the funds are, they'll pay the money directly to the landlord. If those funds run out, then you keep trying, you keep calling. And what happens is the landlord won't accept the rent because they want to evict you for non-payment.
Right.
You're not in compliance with your lease. They may have other reasons other than non-payment of rent. And so what the tenant has to do is they have to have that organization. The organization won't send it directly to the tenant. The money's just not going to go into your pockets. It's for rent. Then they will send it to the court registry. And the court looks for it there. And so if you can't get your landlord to take the rent, then you send it to the court registry, who will turn it over to the landlord once the landlord proves that it's due under the contract. Okay, how can CDC help me from being evicted?
By this.
See, the order has issued this order to temporarily halt residential evictions of covered persons for non-payment of rent. Through March 31st, 2021, CDC is not able to help individual tenants or landlords in eviction actions. So they're just giving you guidelines. Individuals should seek the assistance of legal aid program or private legal counsel. And then here's some other questions that will say if you're a covered person. Who do I contact to appeal an eviction decision made against me?
The court.
The order does not establish an administrative appeal process. Right. You just do it would be the normal things that you would have to do if you wanted to appeal that. The courts are really good about telling you what to do too. I'm watching these hearings. The judge will actually say, you've got so many days to file an appeal. You know, if you get our form.
Go right
and all
down
that.
the hall upstairs.
Yeah, they tell you what to do. Once again, against the landlord, poor landlords.
Yeah.
Individuals who need legal assistance with appeals for eviction actions taken that they believe are in violation of the order should consult with a private attorney or legal aid program. And they go on to say, and they've got all these footnotes, the legal aid programs, of course I didn't print that, are going to include, if you call 211, they're going to tell you what legal aid programs are in your area and which ones you can
Is that
contact.
a statewide number? Is that
I think it's statewide.
Do you know if it's national?
Would you try it?
Yeah.
Just call. Somebody try it for us and let us know.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Someone from New York, if you're listening.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because this is a federal order.
Okay.
Is CDC the that's the
Center for Disease Control?
Yeah. Are they providing rental assistance?
No.
No. Good answer. You passed the bar. I can tell you know to answer these questions. They're leading, and yes or no. But the information about federal and state assistance programs is described below. We're going to give you some information. Where does the order apply?
Where does it apply to rental property?
You keep asking the questions before I even get to them because you're like that kind of girl.
Okay.
Or that kind of attorney. The order applies only in states, localities, territories, or tribal areas that do not have in place a moratorium or on residential evictions that provide the same or greater level of public health protection than the CDC's order. So a lot of people are falling back on this. But if Harris County, Montgomery County, or the state of Texas have an order that provides more protection, then the order won't apply to those protections. But it will for anything that doesn't. So people are going to this one first because it's the easiest and it's the best. It's the most known. Relevant courts deciding these matters should make the decision about whether a state order or legislation provides the same or greater level of public protection. The order is now applicable in American Samoa, which reminds me of Better Call Saul because he got his legal license
he did.
from American Samoa, American University, which has reported cases of COVID. CDC is aware of the following websites for more information on state-by-state eviction moratoriums. They're www.nolo.com. I don't know why. They've got some pretty good information out there. They're I forgot what NOLO stands for, but if you go there, they have a bunch of attorneys, and I've done it before, that answer your legal questions for free, but it's subject to you didn't pay us. You're just taking this. It's worth as much as what you're paying for it.
Right.
They usually have some pretty good stuff out there, though. They've got another one that's it's called Evictionlab.org. So if you go to HTTPS, but I think it's going to be www, Evictionlab, all run together.org, they'll give you more information about what your sources and resources would be to avoid an eviction.
Eviction
it's called
Lab.
Evictionlab.org. Right. Okay. The next one is called PerkinsCole.com. I don't even know what that stands for.
It's probably a law firm.
Yeah, probably so. But they must have a really good site because they got listed on this federal deal. It says CDC is providing these links. The CDC is providing these links for your awareness only. CDC is not evaluated, does not endorse these websites. Neither do we. We're just saying that would be a source of legal information for somebody that doesn't know. But what I've learned when I've watched the eviction proceedings is these tenants are so savvy. They know more than any attorney would know. They know how to fight it. They milk it, and so they're pretty good. I don't know why if they are not able to make money when they're so resourceful and so smart. I mean, these people should be my legal assistant. They know what they're doing.
Yes.
Can I be evicted for reasons other than not paying full rent?
Yes.
And here is the list that most people go with. Yes, you may be evicted for reasons other than not paying full rent. The order does not prevent you from being evicted for engaging in criminal activity while on the premises. If the landlord is saying that they overheard you making an admission that you're
selling
smoke
drugs,
pot or selling drugs, that's enough evidence to get you evicted. It's not working all the time, but that's one reason they can evict you. So it will override non-payment of rent and COVID. Threatening the health or safety of other residents, and they're using that a lot, the landlords, saying because you won't let them come in to do the pest inspections.
Oh, okay.
So if you're threatening their health or safety, I guess COVID might be a reason if you've got COVID and you're not wearing your mask. But I haven't heard that one yet, but it seems like something they could say. Damaging or posing an immediate and significant risk of damage to the property. I've heard a lot of that argument.
Like, what are they doing?
They are
leaving the burners on because it's cold and they have no power.
Yes. Are they're having their friends over that are also bad influences that smoke pot and there's drug activity and that's not allowed. And a lot of these, the ones that are being evicted they have made known on their application that they're in rehabilitation programs for alcohol or drugs, and all they got they're saying that they're bringing their friends over into the apartment, they're staying there, and that the rebuttal is I can't help who comes to my apartment, but if they're coming over there and they get a next door neighbor, the landlord gets a next door neighbor to say they're being rowdy and loud and and we know there's drug activity going on and lots of cars coming and going, the judge is listening to that and it may work. I haven't seen it work yet though. Violating any applicable building code, health ordinance, or similar regulations relating to health or safety. A lot of people will have unusual pets, and they're bringing that up too. And the final is one of the final big reasons is violating any other contractual obligation of the tenant's lease other than the timely payment of rent, not including non-payment of late payment of fees and penalties. In this order, when you're evicting and they've got the CDC declaration, they can ask for back rent, but they can't get the penalties and stuff. You have to do that you have to ask for that in a different, I guess, after the moratorium is over. Individuals who are confirmed to have been exposed to or might have COVID and take reasonable precautions to not spread the disease should not be evicted on the ground that they may pose a health hazard. But if you're not wearing your mask and you're being blatant about it, that would be a reason. You have additional protections against evictions under the laws in your state. we didn't even. I'm getting the sign from Dick that we're almost over, and we haven't even gotten to our frequently asked questions. So my question for you is, what questions do you have?
Oh gosh,
Here.
I don't know. I think I've asked you.
Yeah, I think you have.
Is the CDC eviction ban declaration supposed to be notarized? You said no.
Mm-hmm.
When should they provide CDC eviction ban declaration to their landlord? Immediately, right? As
Yeah.
soon as they
Right.
download it and print it out. How can I prove that I gave my declaration
You gotta-
to my landlord?
Just any way you have to prove it, any way you
Take
could.
a picture
Yeah.
with your phone if it's still working.
Let me ask you this: do landlords have to make their tenants aware of the CDC order and declaration?
No.
No. Okay.
No. Okay, well, we're going to wrap it up. Guys, thank you for listening. We've been answering your questions about CDC declarations and evictions. You can download us tomorrow on Google Play and iTunes. And we want to remind you, as always,
Serve God by serving others.
have a great week.